We have just cleared the first presidential debate, and I have to say it was a complete and total disaster. I know, dramatic take that nobody on the internet has right now, but dear God, this debate was absolutely terrible. And it was terrible from the inception of the design of the debate. What the hell was up with this format? You're going to have 15-minute segments, you're going to have a question to start off each 15-minute segment, and then you're going to have a free-form discussion, but it's not really going to be a free-form discussion because Chris Wallace is going to interrupt during the free-form discussion, not to mention President Trump and Joe Biden are going to interrupt each other like crazy. Now, I'm not going to try to give you the fake balanced approach, the Joe Biden was really bad, Trump was really bad, look at what this says about our great country of America. I'm going to give you the honest approach, and honestly, Donald Trump interrupted Joe Biden way more than Biden interrupted Donald Trump. And honestly, while I don't think interrupting necessarily hurts you in a debate, because the point of these presidential debates is not to win a debate on the grounds of like a normal high school debate club, it's actually to appear stronger than your political opponent. I do feel like sometimes Donald Trump interrupting Joe Biden was interrupting him as he was making a mistake.
And a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
So,
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe.
Remember, as I've said multiple times throughout this primary process, while you and I, because we're following politics, we've been following this election the entire way through, have this vision of Joe Biden as a stumbling and bumbling idiot who can't get through a sentence without messing it up. That is not the perception that the general American public have. Remember, he was the VP under Barack Obama, and that was the last real time that this guy got national attention. The general American public don't follow politics from the primaries into the general election. They start paying attention during the debate, and there were points where Joe Biden looked like he was going to stumble and bumble his way through a couple of sentences, but President Trump ended up cutting him off, so people didn't really get to see the cognitive decline that a lot of people perceive that Joe Biden has during this debate. That doesn't mean that there weren't bad moments for Joe Biden. Of course there were throughout this debate, but it could have been much worse had Biden actually, been able to complete a bunch of sentences without being interrupted by Trump. If only he was interrupted by his own brain, I think that this would have went a lot better for Donald Trump. Now, Chris Wallace had absolutely no control over the debate. That is not news to anybody who watched this debate, because Chris Wallace himself will say that he had no control over the debate. He was just stumbling, bumbling, interrupting, trying to get a hold of the reins of this conversation, and it just didn't work. Now, it's hard for me specifically to say that Chris Wallace did a bad job or a uniquely bad job. He obviously did a bad job moderating this debate, because I can't really imagine any other person in news media having control over this conversation. It was going to go downhill immediately, and Chris Wallace had no way of steering it out of the ditch that this debate was destined for. Now, with that being said, there were points in the conversation where Wallace could have just let the conversation go, but instead he kept interrupting on the basis of keeping them to the 15-minute topics, so each debate topic could be in its own precise segment, and I think that that was to the detriment of the debate. There was a moment where Joe Biden brought up the economy during the COVID portion of the debate, and then Trump went to respond to the economic point, and Chris Wallace was like, well, we're going to talk about the economy soon, President Trump, so don't bother responding to that. And we're watching a debate. You have to actually react to the things that people are saying and not be so wedded to the format. Once one person breaks the format and the other person is responding to the issue brought up during that break of the format, you just kind of have to let the conversation go, not cut off one person when they're responding to the previous person. Like, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for back and forth.
I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
You see,
and it's
We're going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast.
Okay.
Look forward to
We're going to get to...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So we can potentially, and I know this is rare in presidential debates, hear something about policy throughout the course of the debate. Because, by the way, this debate had virtually nothing. Like, you had Joe Biden talking about how Trump totally mishandled the COVID thing. You had Trump talk about how Joe Biden was against the lockdowns or against the travel ban against China. And honestly, it didn't really produce anything policy-ish, because Joe Biden, for all things that he's trying to say, would probably have not been that different than Donald Trump on policy related to COVID. Maybe he would have delayed the travel restrictions. Maybe he would have been more on the side of Democratic governors and their extreme lockdowns. Maybe he would have been criticizing Republican governors more. But honestly, he wouldn't have been that different in terms of policy. And we know that because Joe Biden has listed off a bunch of things that he would have done in this instance. And Donald Trump had already done all of those things. So Biden's just saying, well, I would have done it earlier, which we have no evidence for. We can never go to that alternate universe where Joe Biden is president and he won the 2016 election. The guy didn't even run, and he had to deal with this crisis. That's just not a thing that we can go and check and verify for ourselves. You also had Trump saying that the negative version of Joe Biden being president would have led to 2 million people being dead, and that's like the death count had we done absolutely nothing in response to COVID, supposedly. And I don't know if that is actually true, to be honest, myself.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000. And
the nursing home thing wasn't really brought up. President Trump didn't really hit the Democrats, Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, on the fact that they're pushing anti-vaccine rhetoric because President Trump is the president now and he's promising a vaccine, and the Democrats have to always take the opposite position of President Trump. So that didn't really come up. And we wasted an entire 15-minute segment discussing climate change, of all things.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I mean, honestly, what was really gained by having this segment in the debate, as opposed to, a national security segment or a foreign policy segment? Remember, the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. I think that would have been much more important to have in this debate than a segment about the Paris Climate Accords, which was a non-binding resolution that didn't require the biggest polluting nations to cut any carbon until like 2040, where they said they might consider slowing down their carbon production, and us talking about forests, as if us not using fossil fuels will change the fact that we do need to manage the forest better in states like California. It was a complete ridiculous segment and a total waste of time, much like all climate change segments are during these presidential debates. I mean, honestly, even if you're the biggest climate change zealot, are you going to tell me that anything discussed related to climate change had any substance or weight to it? Are you really going to make the argument that we should focus on lowering the temperature over the next 100 years in order to reduce forest fires now, over mitigation strategies in California and in the Pacific Northwest? This was a completely pointless and irrelevant conversation, and honestly, I don't know why it was a 15-minute segment in the debate. I would have immediately jumped off of it and talked about something significantly more important and more pertinent to the American public. I would have zeroed in on Joe Biden's hypocrisy and doublespeak when it comes to the lockdowns, where he says that the lockdown and the shutdown of the economy rests solely on President Trump, therefore it's his recession, therefore it's his depression, and then later on in the debate criticizing states for opening up too soon, even though he said the lockdown is on President Trump and that's hurting people, but also opening up is on Trump and it's hurting people.
Worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. The idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety.
So we should lock down so that Trump could take the blame for the economy, but we should not lock down so that Trump could take the blame for the spike of COVID deaths. Like, honestly, it made no sense, and the fact that this wasn't called out during the debate was really unfortunate for President Trump. Also, I would have harped on, and I mean significantly harped on, Joe Biden saying that Antifa is an idea and not an organization.
Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia.
Antifa is an organization. They have meetings. They all wear the same uniform. They all believe the same exact thing. They're all communists. They train together. They screen their members. They communicate through encrypted text messaging apps. And they also screen media outlets for who's allowed to cover them while they're doing their rioting so that they do propaganda for them. So the idea that Joe Biden would lie for them, say that they're not an organization, that they're an idea, as if this was a spontaneous uprising against the non-existent fascism that we keep hearing about in the media that does not actually exist within the United States of America, is absolutely ridiculous. Joe Biden was running defense for the organization that, along with Black Lives Matter, is responsible for the majority of the rise of political violence within the United States of America, is absolutely ridiculous, and I would have never stopped hitting him on that he can't call out Antifa, that he's giving them the cover of them not being an organization, even though, except for having membership cards, they act in an organization from top to bottom in every way possible. I mean, there are Antifa people that showed up at other protests in other part of the country that were started in Portland. How are these people getting themselves to all these locations to get arrested in all of this rioting if they're not an organization? Why are they going in big groups? Like, what the hell are we even talking about that this is an idea and not an organization? Completely ridiculous, and it should have been harped on 10,000 times more, just like President Trump should have responded to Chris Wallace using the half of that quote about good people on both sides in Charlottesville in order to attack him, because that's not the full quote. That is a lie being pushed by the mainstream media.
The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Let me play the entire tape for you so you can hear that that's just completely made up.
Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as you, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
So even though he specifically said he's not talking about the neo-Nazis or anybody that you would want him to condemn in that statement, that lie has been going and being perpetuated by the mainstream media for the last 3 years, virtually unchallenged, and Chris Wallace presented it to Joe Biden as a question, even though he's a Fox News host and he should know better. This is something that has been debunked, refuted, and disputed on Fox News. Absolutely ridiculous, but Chris Wallace puts it forward, and President Trump barely makes an effort to challenge it. Once Wallace said that they changed the topic, Trump just kind of went along with them changing the topic. I would have paused, used my 2 minutes to correct the record, and challenge Chris Wallace on the way that he presented that question. Overall, I don't think there were any real winners during this debate. I don't think this moves the needle for either candidate, and honestly, that's a shame, because President Trump really needed this debate to help him catch up to Joe Biden and a lot of the polling when it comes to swing states. So if you want this election to be more interesting, if you want people to actually be competitive in these swing states, you definitely want these debates to go better than this one did last night. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As usual, if you like the video, you know what to do. You can show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all the social medias. You can support me with the support links. This has been me talking about the first presidential debate between President Trump and Joe Biden. Until next time.